Thank you. I'd like to call the Joint Special School Building Committee to order. It's Thursday, August 23rd, 2018. We're in the National High School North Lecture Hall. Meeting. This was going to be following the construction meeting, but we don't have a quorum for construction, and we can cover most everything at the joint special. So with that, Mr. Smith, if you'd act as the, are you the clerk? No, you're Mr. Smith, if you'd act as the clerk and call the roll.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman McCarthy. Present. Ms. Golia. Alderman Jett.
Your microphone is not on.
Sean, your microphone, please. Okay, we got affirmatives from Alderman Dowd and McCarthy, not Melissa Golia. Alderman Jett, or Jetty. Alderwoman Klee.
Here.
Ms. Oden.
Here.
Mr. Guarino. Ms. Raymond.
Here.
Mr. Mosier. Ms. Porter.
Here.
Quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. I know Mr. Guarino had sent a message that he was not going to be available tonight. Alderman Melissa Golia is at the Nashua Goes Back to School event. But we do have a quorum. So, if Mr. Smith, if you would read the prayer, and Alderman McCarthy, if you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the educational affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us, God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We took the roll. Previous meeting minutes, Alderman McCarthy.
Move that the minutes of the Joint Special School Building Committee meeting held Thursday, July 26, 2018 be accepted and placed on file, and that the reading be suspended.
Okay, the motion is to accept the minutes of the Joint Special School Building Committee of Thursday, July 26, 2018, and place them on file. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, remarks by chairman. I'm glad we have a quorum. Sometimes in the summer, we used to have problems, but now with only 10, we have a better chance of having a quorum, and we do tonight. So. Remarks by school administration. Mr. Smith?
Just one on your behalf. I invited Ms. Jen DeShays to our meeting to discuss the OSIP programs during the middle school construction project discussion. And I will add a new arrival.
Okay. All right. Do you want to do that later or now or?
At your pleasure. She likes being here, so we can wait till.
You are so kind. It's up.
No, that's fine.
All right.
We can wait.
So, Construction Projects Committee report. We didn't have one this evening, and I don't think we had one the last meeting, so we don't have any minutes.
Nope.
Items for discussion. So this evening, we're going to be discussing invoices first, and then the middle school construction project. So, Mr. Smith, you want to?
You want a motion on the invoices?
On what?
A motion on the invoices?
Yeah, I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to say about the invoices first, but we do need a motion on the invoices, yes. Well, Mr. Alderman McCarthy?
Move to approve payment in the amount of $7,570 to Advanced Roof Management and $545,466.25 to A&M Roofing Services.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to accept the invoices from Advanced Roof Management for $7,570 and A&M Roofing Services for $5,445 and $466.25. Any discussion? Alderman McCarthy?
Yeah, what period is for that, is that for? That ends,
We received 2 invoices from A&M Roofing, and actually received one in July, the other one in.
period 2/7/31. Oh, okay. So this ends at 8/13, basically, it looks like.
Right.
We were 2/3 done in the middle of August?
I would say so, yes, actually, everything was on the roof, they made great progress.
Okay.
In fact, they're working on the extra work that we gave them.
Oh, your mic's.
Your mic on? You're here all the time, usually.
Yes, they were 2/3 of the way done at that point. Everything was stored and on the roof, and they've been making good progress.
Okay.
All right.
Are we carrying, yeah, we are. So there's also, we're actually a little more than 2/3 done, but there's retainage in that, not in the balance that's left, right?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Okay. Again, were there any questions? Oh, Mr. Smith?
So in your package, the supplemental package I handed out, on the second page, you recall last meeting you approved about $125,000 of extra work on the roof at Fairgrounds Middle School. Advanced Roof Management, who's our consultant and who's doing the construction administration, then submitted the proposal for them to continue work, and this will actually go into the school year, and request an increase to their scope of work of $3,200.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
We should probably vote on the invoices first.
Oh, yes. All in favor of paying the invoices, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. So now we need to authorize the expenditure of the $3,200 for the CACM proposal.
Correct.
Alderman McCarthy.
I'll make a motion to increase the amount with Advanced Roof Management by $3,200.
Okay. The motion on the floor is to approve the additional expenditure of $3,200 for the tech ed roof replacement at Fairgrounds Middle School. Is there any discussion? Yes.
I just have one quick question. It says for consulting administration, and then it talks about kind of being in the field and so on. Is that to do inspections, and is this normal that
Yes, yes.
this would come in at the last minute or increase?
No, this was in response to our adding $125,000 of work at
Okay.
the last meeting.
Thank you.
They were already on the job for the other department.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, motion on the floor is to accept the proposal for $3,200 addition to the tech ed roof replacement. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Mr. Smith?
I should have noted before you, well, it doesn't matter. We had 22,000 left in contingency before we took the 3,200 out, so that still leaves us just under 19,000.
Yeah, I checked that out before. Otherwise, we'd be looking for some additional funding. All right, and it looks like if all goes well, we'll have money left at the end of the project.
It looks that way. They encountered a little more asbestos in the corners of the roof where the flashing was, so there may be some additional work. But we've also cut a few not cut corners, but found savings in other places, so it may come out about even. So we should end up with at least over 15,000 left over.
Okay. All right, all set with the invoices and the proposal. Middle school construction project. Do we want to start with the discussion on,
Sure. So Jen DeShays is here from Risk Management. She's the supervisor, director, manager,
Almost.
all those things.
Sean, can you explain why you have her here
And,
and the question that came up?
Yes, so the question came up, I wasn't here, but the question came up at last meeting, should we consider owner-controlled insurance program? Jen can talk about that. Basically, we did that during the high school construction project back in the early 2000s and saved somewhere between $1 million and $2 million just by running our own insurance program instead of having the contractor do it. So we might consider doing that again, and Jen can tell us all about it.
Okay.
So basically, mine's on? Yeah. Basically, the concept of a OSIP is instead of having your contractors and subcontractors provide insurance, the OSIP itself buys the insurance. It's buying power. To evaluate whether or not you do an OSIP, usually you have an insurance advisor do a feasibility study to determine whether or not the project itself is big enough to go down that road. But I'm going to explain it a little bit here in simple terms. So the cost of insurance is, let's just say $100,000. Claims come in at $80,000. You have a $20,000 savings. The claims are, during the first project we did with the high schools, risk management administered all the claims, and we had brokers, insurance advisors, consultants. They were all part of that. It's for workers' comp and general liability. Those are the two lines of insurance that typically an OSIP covers. You have other insurances such as asbestos insurance that falls outside that, but your typical main two insurances are workers' comp and general liability. I wasn't in charge of the program back then. I pulled out all my boxes because it was, what year? I mean, we had
2000 to 2004.
yeah, back then. So if you have questions, I think maybe that's better. If you want to ask questions, I might be able to answer them.
Alderman Jettie?
Starting from the basics, OSF.
So it's an owner-controlled insurance program, and that's a OCIP. And it's basically we control the program. So instead of having the contractors and subcontractors bid on the job with their insurance, they bid without the insurance. And we control the insurance program. So we insure the whole project.
Follow up?
My green light's on, I don't know.
There.
Oh. It's brighter now. Sorry. So I guess the risk is that, you know, if I don't know, a roof caves in and, you know, a crew of 12 people get killed, you know,
Well, it's not self-insurance. It's insurance. So we're actually buying insurance, but we have better buying power than the individual small contractors do. So we're paying less for that insurance than the contractors and subcontractors are paying. So there's no risk to the city other than the buying of insurance. It's not part of our self-insured program where we pay $1 with a high retention for our claims. So it's an insurance company that's actually paying the claims. They're taking the risk. We're buying the policy.
okay, so when you said self-funded insurance program,
Owner-controlled. So we control it, meaning we have the policies. There are policies. They're issued to the city of Nashua. They're not issued to the individual contractors and subcontractors. And we handle the claims in-house, and we did that for additional savings. You can hire a TPA to do that, but our office handled all the workers' comp and general liability claims.
okay, thank you for that clarification. I misunderstood.
I started off rocky there, so.
Alderman McCarthy, do you want to add anything?
No, we did this on this project and the South School, and the savings actually worked out to be significant. And when you look at, what we did was every time we bid something out, we would ask them for with and without insurance. Some of them actually can't waive their own insurance because of various things, so on those, we don't put them under our insurance. But most of them were able to do that, and the bids come in substantially lower that way.
And like you said, they bid with and without insurance, and the difference, and that's how there's a calculation the insurance company does on the savings. And there's some contractors that were not in the OSIP. We didn't insure them, and that they're just tracked separately.
Yes.
Is there a difference in the coverage? Is it better coverage than an individual contractor could get? Is it comparable?
It's safer coverage for the city because we know they're insured and we know they have high limits. I believe, I'm going to guess here, I believe our insurance, we had different layers of general liability and workers' comp. And I think some of our insurance went up to $75 million. You're not going to see that from your contractors, most of the smaller ones. So we have guaranteed insurance, number one. But there's no difference in typically in anything other than the limits of the coverage and whether or not they're covered.
So if an individual contractor had a low limit and the claim was above that, would the city be responsible for the difference?
No, because their insurance wouldn't come into play at all.
No, if you didn't have this.
If we didn't have this,
So if an individual contractor had their own insurance and something happened that was above their limit that they were covered
Would the
for,
city
would
be
the city be responsible?
liable? No, there wouldn't be any exposure on the city.
Okay.
And we also have insurance requirements, so
Okay.
if you're going to work on city property, there's a certain level of insurance you need to carry.
Okay, thank you.
It's basically that we can buy the insurance cheaper. And then we know for sure that they have adequate insurance and that we're going to manage the claims. So it's a safeguard and it's cheaper for us.
And it is a huge savings. I think I looked at a report we had, I believe it was 1.4 million that we saved during the high school project.
So I believe we put that in the RFPs, correct?
I did. I just asked for their history and their
Right.
knowledge of our OSIPs.
At the last meeting when we discussed the RFPs, that's one of the things Alderman McCarthy had brought up to have put in the RFPs. And speaking of the RFPs, good lead in. Do you want to address where we're at with the RFPs?
Okay. Just one follow on that. So one of the evaluation criteria that we can use for the construction managers is their safety record. Different contractors have different approaches to safety. Some have large safety staffs, some just anoint somebody as a safety officer. But they all keep a safety record, and we can ask for that number from them. Then that can help us through this process.
It's part of the process, actually.
Okay. And then maybe if I just ask a question, so I presume this is something that starts when the first shovel hits the ground as part of the construction, right?
Before that,
Before that?
if we're going to do an OSIP, it's something we need to start discussing. I mean, well, I don't know when the first shovel is going to hit.
That's where I was gonna go with it. So how much head notice do you need before
I
we
don't
should have it in
know.
place?
I'd have to reach out to our current broker and probably get him involved and find out how that process develops. I can do that.
Alderman McCarthy, did you?
Yeah, I was just going to point out, one of the things we did on this project also, and we don't need to know this in the RFP, but we had as I recall, independent safety manager that the city had hired out of some of the OSIP savings, which actually brought the cost of the insurance down further.
Yeah, we actually had someone within our own office that was on site 4 hours a day. And then Gil Bain had somebody that we hired additionally, John, I can't think of his name now, but John Mello was his name. We hired him to be the on-site safety loss prevention person.
Does everybody understand what that person does? When you have projects the size of, say, the two high schools and this project we're in now, you need that kind of oversight. Make sure everything's being done safely and to help protect as far as insurance and injuries and all that other stuff.
The loss prevention is key.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to keep the workers' compensation costs down.
Okay, any additional questions on that? Mr. Smith?
So with so the last meeting you provided my replacement, Mr. Lassard, a series of things to add to the RFPs. So OSIP obviously is one of my, I added that, the construction manager. I had conversations with Steve Bolton, city attorney, about what the AIA document should look like. His response was, well, what did we do during the high school project, and can you pull those out of the archives? Those are buried somewhere, probably at Pennachuck Middle School up in the mezzanine. So we have not done that yet. So what I did is I just noted in the RFP that there will be owner modifications to the AIA documents. And then I added a similar clause for the architect, which you had noted there wasn't anything about the forms in there. So I updated the dates and everything, and after all that was done, I actually put them on a street and onto the city's website yesterday. And in the RFP, so the supplemental handout I had is the timeline at this point. And so September 11th, which I think is election day, actually, the schools will be closed. And so I took advantage of that to bring both the architects and the construction managers to Elm Street and give them a tour of that facility. And then the proposals were due on October 3rd and 4th, as indicated on that sheet. The rest of it, we can go from there. I'll certainly need your input on how you want to proceed with the interviews. If you want me to do the initial sort and tell you who I think is qualified and meets requirements, and then you select it from there. We don't have to decide that tonight. That's just coming attractions. And then the other information, actually Alderman Dowd, you asked for, was the parcel of land that the city owns in the southwest quadrant. So also on your supplemental handout, there's so it's the third page in. On page 1 shows I'm not sure what shape that is, my geometry. It's kind of a 1, 2, 3, 5-sided, but there is a little hitch in there. So it'd be a pentagon type thing. I believe you can see the main roads that are on there. And then if you go through the next 2 pages, it gets closer, close up. And it would appear that, based on this, that your main entryway would probably be from Cherrywood, but not necessarily. We have to, at some point, hire a surveyor and site engineers to help the architect figure that out. And then the last few pages show you all the lots that are nearby and lot numbers, and gives you a sense for where it is. The very last 2 pages, so those lines are contour lines. Generally, the way contours work is the closer the lines are together, the steeper the terrain is. So you can see this is actually a fairly smooth site. There's not a lot of peaks and valleys, so that works out well for this sort of project. Any questions?
Do you know if we've ever done core samples on that property?
Not to my knowledge. I could reach out to Hayner Swanson and somebody like that and see if they have.
They assume they'll want to do that at some point if we haven't done it.
I've already got the RFPs prepared to hire a site geotech, but I think we have to wait till the architect's on board for that, wouldn't we?
Probably. And I'm assuming as part of the project, we'll be hooking up to city sewage, city water. Okay. Any questions? Alderman Jettie?
So, what you've showed us here is this the extent of what the city owns? What's drawn in the red, or is that just part of what the city owns there?
I believe that's the extent. It was set aside specifically for a school. I don't know who owns the rest of the forested area.
Alderman McCarthy, you want to cover?
Yeah, the parcels around it are owned primarily by members of the Gagnon family, some of whom live on those parcels, some live elsewhere on Buck Meadow Road.
It's probably one of the small piece of property that we would have to acquire for access, so we have two access. It's a small piece that, I think on the second to last page, you can maybe see it, or. But, you know, that will all be predicated on the study done by the architect. Alderman Jettie?
As a follow-up, could you help me understand how large a parcel is this, and how much of that would a building take up?
Alderman McCarthy can probably answer that. He's very familiar with it.
The site's about 20 acres. The footprint of the building, single-story middle school is probably about 3 acres for the building footprint. We would likely build 2 stories, I suspect, on there, and it would have maybe a 1.5 to 2 acre footprint for the building, another 2 acres of parking, and then athletic fields.
Certainly more green space than Elm Street, but when we get the architects, you know, they're gonna do the evaluation as to alternative A versus alternative B, and we see where we're at. So this, if it goes to a build, that would be the piece of property we'd use, since it's already city-owned.
I believe it's also easy access to surrounding athletic fields that are already in place. So if they need more space, it's just a short jog away.
Yeah. And if you read the proposals, what we're asking for is, one of the things the architect is to look at is if we went with the alternative, as part of the cost of the alternative to build a new school, would also be to look at balancing the populations of all 3 schools. And certainly getting rid of the portables at Pennachuck is about 40 years overdue, even though we own them. So I think it also states in there that you'd have 3 schools with about an 800 student population. Right now Elm Street has over 1,000. And Pennachuck is the smallest, and I want to say it was 600 and something, and I forget what Fairgrounds is, but. Alderman McCarthy?
Yeah, just to point out some of the open space that's around it. Here's the site. This is Man Dunstable Elementary School is over here. The soccer fields around that are in this area. There's another set of soccer fields back here that we developed some years ago. This entire parcel, well, this part of the parcel here is city property, and this part here also is, that's Sam Tamposi Park, and then this is the Hugh Gregg Conservation Area back here, which we own. Udicki Farm is right about here, so there's a tremendous amount of open space. There's a trail network that runs from here all the way over past Lovell's Pond and out into Udicki. So there's a lot of open space, and there's an existing trail network within the Maplewood development that runs from here along through here and back to the site. So in terms of things like walking access, there's a lot of opportunity there for students to be able to walk without walking on major roads.
Alderman Jettie?
I also noticed there are a couple of pizza places designated on the map, which
Points of reference.
evidently has some importance to somebody.
Yes, in the interest of equal time, there's also a fairly good Chinese restaurant over there.
Yeah.
So.
And it's just points of reference so you can orient yourself onto the map, not a commercial for the establishments. Yes?
Is there any thought to making access onto Buck Meadow?
Alderman McCarthy?
Yeah, we'd likely have to do that, but that's going to require some land negotiation to do.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
that'll be fun.
I'd prefer not to tip our hand on that at the moment.
Yes. Mr. Smith, anything else you want to add relative to the, how about discussing the timing? I know it's in the RFPs, but just for the public.
Well, again, the proposals are due in early October. It'll take me a few weeks at least to go through them. Perhaps, again, I think this committee will have to decide how it wants to proceed. If it wants me to narrow the field to 2 or 3 or 4 vendors of each, or, and then do you want to interview them? We need that discussion.
You have any anticipation about how many people might respond based on what's going on in the area?
I would say architects, we're going to get a good amount of response. I sent it out to the last 3 architects directly that we've dealt with, and they all have already expressed interest.
I think most of the time we get about anywhere between 4 and 7.
I wouldn't be surprised if we have a dozen. Some other firms that have been snooping around for a while, asking about it.
When we get closer, the committee can decide, well, once we see how many came back, we can see how many we want to narrow it down to. And if there are people, for whatever reason, don't qualify, then we can eliminate them before we interview. But I think we will want to interview, the finalists.
I can, once I get the responses, I can just put it all on a spreadsheet, and then you can look at it, and we can make that decision.
Okay. Yes.
So in getting the work done at the at the middle school, so we're going to do something at Pennachuck regarding the portables and whatever. Is there any work that needs to be done at Fairgrounds?
That's going to be dependent on the architect's report, and it also depends on the alternative that we select.
Right.
Based on costs and things. Alderman McCarthy?
Yeah, in some discussions with the superintendent, there was a desire at Fairgrounds to at least look at the, some of the technical education spaces and improve those at the same time.
That would be part of the same project.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, as I've said before, I think what we're trying to do is to step back and look at the overall middle school problem and fix the program and then build a home for the program to live in that consisted of those 3 sites. Fairgrounds is in fairly good condition of the 3 schools, but there are areas where the program could be enhanced by some work on the building.
We want a certain level of equity between
Yeah.
the 3. Okay.
I also talked to Mr. Smith today about at some point in the future, inviting the 3 middle school principals in to just have a discussion as to what they think, the schools ought to have. It doesn't mean that we're going to entertain everything they want, but at least you have a feel for their thinking.
So we would want a list of priorities for a middle school.
Yeah.
What it should have, and then try to ensure that to the best level we can, each of the 3 schools.
Because at some point,
complies.
the architect will probably have those discussions with them as well, but I thought it might be beneficial to have the joint special hear what they have to say.
Right.
And then when we work with the architect, we'll know.
Especially if we're reshuffling students to go between the 3.
When it comes to redistricting, that's all yours.
No. We want to make sure everyone wants to go to each of those schools.
I've already had people asking me, where are the boundaries? I said, I'm not addressing any boundaries. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, if it's any consolation, we did the same thing for the high school project. So, people instead of having one high school, now you had two, and they had developed boundaries and decide who went where. The other thing they did through the architect was go through an educational specification process. So they spoke to all the department heads. It was a top-to-bottom review of the at that point the high school programs. So I anticipate they do the same for the middle schools. Of course, the Board of Ed will be involved in that.
It's a little easier with the high schools. We had a river. Made a big boundary. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, so we'll wait for the responses. But again, the general timeline, which is in the documents, if you want to just, for the general public that's watching, give an overview, like the documents are due back October 3rd, correct?
Yes, so the RFPs for both construction manager and architect are now posted on the city website. We have a walkthrough on September 11th for both of those two groups. And then the proposals are due on October 3rd for the construction managers and October 4th for the architects.
And then at some point, we'll be determining when we will, well, first thing we'll have to do is determine a course of action based on what their recommendations are. And then we'll have to go for funding, bonding, correct? And we'll, at that point, we won't know until that point in time what our approach is and what the costs are. Then when the bonding has its public hearing and is approved, after that's done, then we can let contracts and let the games begin. We don't know the timing yet, but it's certainly not going to be imminent. It's going to take a while for all of that to take place. Oh, Mr. Smith.
Just a question. So I believe you were looking at taking the money from other projects and putting them into this middle school project already. I think that was before the alderman, or?
Done.
Done? Okay. Was that like 250 exactly? I can get it from Sue Lover.
150.
So,
The bond was approved at the full board level, so it's,
Okay. So next time I'll just do a financial report for Elm Street, and that'll be
so
the seed
when
money.
we hire, you're gonna get the proposals in, we'll see what their costs are, and hopefully, you know, we match the number that we have,
Yeah, it should get us through at least the feasibility studies and that sort of thing.
yeah, so. Yep, and then once we hire an architect and a building manager, we'll have to give them some period of time to come up with their alternatives, which could be months, right? So, okay. Did you want to discuss the deferred maintenance thing or not? No? Yes?
I don't know if it's really part of this committee, right?
All right.
But it's probably the individual projects are such that you
Right.
just approve the money and I spend it.
Yeah, good point.
And the more the better. You know.
Yeah. It looks now like it's gonna be tied to a couple other things the mayor wants to do, so. That legislation will probably be going before the board on, full Board of Aldermen on the 29th of September. I think it's the 29th. Second meeting in September. Okay. Is there anything else to be brought up for discussion? There's no need for public comment, no members of the public. Committee members' comments? Anyone? No? Okay, we don't need a non-public. Do I have a motion? Alderman McCarthy?
move to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 7:40.